As Japan grew, many Americans assumed that the Japanese economy was dancing to an American beat.
Viewed from the outside, Japan looked like an imitation of the U.S. But in point of fact, Japan was evolving toward a very, very different economic and political pattern. The name of the game was capitalism. But Japan and the United States were playing by a very, very different set of rules.
No one knows the rules of the game better than Takeshi Isayama. For decades, men like Isayama have guided the Japanese economy on behalf of MITI, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. At this corporate baseball tournament, Isayama is the guest of honor, a sign of a special reverence for government bureaucrats not found in America. In the United States, the government is like an umpire, making sure business plays by the rules. But in Japan, the government is on the field, coaching industry. Big business and government are on the same team.
People in Japan expect certain things of the Japanese government, of the central bureaucracy. Actually, there's quite a high expectation that they will be defending the national interest. And I think in the post-war period, that has been defined primarily as promoting Japan's economic development.
Like most Japanese bureaucrats, Isayama's crowded bullpen office does not reflect the prestige of his position. He heads the division of MITI that oversees the global development of Japan's latest high technology. Day after day, Isayama hears about the problems facing Japanese corporations. Then he writes the laws that govern industry. Isayama also offers special incentives to help companies develop new technology.
適切なガイダンスを与えられるだけのその知的なそのセンスっていうのを我々が持つかどうか。MITI's job is to guide the development of Japan's future. こういう方向に進まなきゃいけないんじゃないかっていうことを企業がいくらその業界 If a certain segment of industry wants to go one way and another wants to go another way, the conflict will be destructive. It is MITI's job to mediate and choose the best road for all. 少し変えていくということは通産省との役割として。
Today, the businessmen who come to see Isayama are wealthy and powerful. He must use the gentle art of persuasion to advance MITI's goals. But 30 years ago, MITI was the commander-in-chief of the Japanese economy. It gave the orders and companies obeyed.
Japan was a developing nation, and in order to catch up to the other nations economically, it was necessary for some degree of protection, financial support, and regulations. These were the primary responsibilities of MITI.
MITI funneled Japan's scarce resources to key industries. In 1957, MITI decided Japan's future depended on electronics.
Radio は、 誠に近代文化の成果とも言うべきでしょう。
MITI favored Japan's big pre-war companies like Toshiba, Hitachi, and Matsushita. Little companies had a harder time. In the 1950s, Akio Morita helped to found a small tape recorder company that would become Sony. He wanted to buy a new American invention called the transistor, but he needed permission from MITI.
When we applied MITI, our government did not think Sony has a appropriate engineering power. So they delayed their approval. So it took more than 6 months to get the final approval to send the money.
When MITI gave permission, Sony bought the transistor license for $25,000. A year later, Sony produced the first transistor radios made in Japan.
Sing, 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 everybody start to sing. La-di-da, hooty-hoo, all you singing with a swing. Sing, 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 sing.
Through private initiative and government guidance, the Japanese electronics industry grew at a furious pace.
And the music all around, everybody all around. It's something you should know. Oh, oh, baby, oh, yes, sing, sing.
But high-speed growth put Japan on a collision course with the United States and an American institution, television.
Well, excuse me. It means that you see virtually everything the TV camera sees and transmits. There's more picture.
Television was an American invention. In 1955, there were 27 U.S. TV producers with familiar names like RCA, General Electric, and Zenith. Now there's only one. In 1955, there were 10 Japanese TV companies. Today, all 10 are still in business. The story of TV is the story of the collision of two economic systems. In the U.S., American companies were on their own. In Japan, companies often worked together and were protected and guided by the government. MITI encouraged Japanese companies to buy American TV technology from GE and RCA. The U.S. proudly sold its technology to keep Japan strong against the communist threat. And the U.S. looked the other way as the Japanese government protected Japan from U.S. competition.
The government's great priority was maintaining a smooth diplomatic and military relationship with Japan, having free access to the bases in Japan, and really great reluctance in the State Department, the White House, the National Security Council, the Pentagon, for the U.S. to do anything that might upset that nice, smooth relationship.
While their home market was protected, Japanese companies captivated American consumers with snazzy new products. Their quality was high, and their price was low. That was good news for American consumers, and bad news for U.S. TV makers. But despite intense competition from Japan, American companies kept doing things the same old way.
The American electronics industry is a classic example of economic short-sightedness. They went for the style and better service instead of technological innovation. When they wanted to cut costs, they'd farm out the production offshore to factories in Mexico or somewhere in the third world. Fundamentally, they were contemptuous of Japanese competition And of course, they paid for that contempt dearly.
All RCA factory service. There's a bank in all the cities, and you can depend on RCA factory service.
While U.S. companies sold service, Japanese manufacturers were working on sets that did need it. In 1966, MITI supervised a research project aimed at replacing tubes with transistors. Every Japanese TV company was involved. 3 years later, the Japanese introduced the world to the next generation of color TV. While Japanese companies openly cooperated on research, many secretly conspired to keep prices high at home while undercutting prices in the United States.
They had an arrangement in the U.S. market in which the Japanese companies agreed that they would not attack each other in the U.S. market. They would attack Motorola or Zenith or General Electric by quoting very low prices to the distributors of those companies' products, but they would not go after each other in the U.S. market.
By the mid-1970s, American consumers were hooked on inexpensive, well-made Japanese TVs, and the U.S. television industry was mortally wounded.
That's life.